My name is Feugap. I'm the Africa organizer for World Beyond War. I'm happy to join this summit from Cameroon in Yaoundé. I'm going to discuss with you about the ideas for peace that we have in our context, the infrastructures for peace in Africa. So I'm going to share my screen now. I'm happy to have this opportunity to speak on the infrastructures for peace in Africa. To have an overview of what we are going to talk about today, we are going to see why infrastructure for peace, why infrastructure for peace needed in Africa, how do governments materialize peace in Africa, what should infrastructures for peace include in Africa, and we shall provide some examples of community-based infrastructures of peace. And lastly, World Beyond War's ideas for peace infrastructures in Africa. We need infrastructure for peace in Africa because the continent has experienced and is still experiencing numerous conflicts, both internal and cross-border. Diverse communities face challenges in terms of integration and mutual understanding. Many investors do not do business in Africa because of the lack of stable and peaceful environments. Government structures are not transparent, accountable, nor inclusive. Africa is vulnerable to various shocks, including climate change and pandemics. Youth and women are not well engaged in peace-building processes. Let's look at the way governments materialize peace in Africa. Generally, governments design peace policies and infrastructures or structures for conflict prevention, crisis response, and fostering community-based approaches to peace. Governments enable non-governmental organizations, international partners to create and implement peace projects in collaboration with local organizations. Some countries have created ministries of peace, although they can have different names depending on the countries. We have, for example, the Ministry of Peace Building in South Sudan. We have the Ministry of Peace in Ethiopia. In the majority of cases, several ministries often take on roles related to peace building and conflict resolutions. In Sierra Leone, for instance, we have the Ministry of Internal Affairs, Local Government, and Rural Development. We have in Cameroon ministries like the Ministry of Youth Affairs and Civic Education, as well as the Ministry of Women Empowerment and Family. We have the Ministry of National Unity and Civic Engagement in Rwanda. We have in Kenya the Ministry of Interior and Coordination of National Government. We have in Uganda the Ministry of Justice and Constitutional Affairs. So these ministries have specific tasks and roles dedicated to peace issues. In order to address or to respond to conflicts and crises, there are peace commissions that are usually set up. Still in Cameroon, we have the example of the DDR and the National Commission for Bilingualism and Multiculturalism that was created as a response to the conflict in the northwest and southwest regions of the country. Let's look at the case of Liberia particularly, where the country is on its way to develop a sustainable peace-building framework that meets a political identity in a complex community setting in the absence of a strong governmental presence throughout the country. The government is making efforts to develop and strengthen the institutions responsible for security, development, and governance. Traditional disputes resolutions mechanisms provide some respite at local level, but there is a need for the development of stronger dispute resolution capacities that can weave together, integrate, and complement these community mechanisms where they exist and are effective. There is in the country the Kofi Annan Institute for Conflict Transformation. That is an opportunity to contribute to Liberia's national recovery, development, peace, and gender equality. In the case of Malawi, for example, stakeholders from diverse sectors have developed a national peace architecture since 2012 and made a recommendation on the proposal to establish an infrastructure for peace. The traditional authorities endorsed the idea to establish a national peace structures in 2014. There was unanimity regarding the need for the national peace architecture. The President of the Republic introduced the first ever national peace policy in 2017. The policy clarifies the institutional arrangement within which peace-building initiatives will be coordinated and collaborated among stakeholders that includes government, tradition leaders, civil society, women, youth, media, and other organs. In the case of Southern Africa, there is a strong regional institution such as the SADC that has established and operationalized peace and security organs that strategically intervene in cases of destabilization of the region. Here we have two categories of infrastructures of peace. First, state-centric infrastructures for peace that are named by government security apparatus. The most prominent types of infrastructure for peace under this category includes conflict management committees, human rights commissions, peace and reconciliation commissions, and national peace architectures. The second category is the non-state-centric infrastructure for peace that are independent architectures established by civil society organizations, faith-based organizations, media organizations, and traditional peace-building mechanisms. The focus of their work is mainly in the area of peace-building, social cohesion, humanitarian affairs, democracy, and human rights. The reality is that these infrastructures for peace in Africa generally do not work, and there are reasons why they don't work. Root causes of conflicts are not addressed. Governance and rule of law do not have a content. Africa peace structures miss effective governance, transparency, and accountability. In the case of Cameroon, institutions and ministries are more about spending money than solving problems. We have lots of ministries, and people think that some of those ministries do not really serve the interest of the population, that they are there for almost nothing. They are there to spend money instead of finding solutions to daily problems of the population. What should infrastructures for peace include in Africa? Infrastructures for peace in Africa should include mechanisms for protecting human rights to ensure justice, such as human rights commissions and traditional justice processes. Such structures can help address grievances and prevent cycle of violence. Mediation centers, early warning systems, and peace education programs should also be included in infrastructure for peace in Africa to help prevent conflict from escalating and provide mechanisms for resolving disputes peacefully. Considering the fact that peace is a prerequisite for economic development, Infrastructures for peace should include economic policies and equitable resources distributions to ensure that economic benefits are shared, reducing the likelihood of conflict over resources, as these are one root cause of conflict. Engaging youth and women in peace-building processes is crucial. Infrastructures for peace should focus on these groups to foster structures like youth peace clubs and women's peace networks, harness their potential as agents of change, and ensure their voices are heard. Community-based peace infrastructures like local peace committees and dialogue platforms should be fostered for social cohesion by promoting communication and understanding among different groups. Good governance is critical for maintaining peace. Local governance initiatives should be participatory and citizens' trust in public institutions should be built. Infrastructures for peace in Africa should also include judicial mechanisms to handle cases related to war crimes, crimes against humanity, genocides, and so on. Because Africa is the primary focus of the International Criminal Court when it comes to prosecuting war makers. The International Criminal Court's focus on Africa has actually been a subject of criticism, though the court addresses some of the most severe conflict and human rights abuses in the continent. Many claim that the court disproportionately targets African nations while neglecting crimes in other parts of the world. I'm going to share an example of a community-based infrastructure for peace in Africa that have bear some fruits. This is the Women's Situation Room that was established in line with the provisions of the United Nations Security Council resolutions 1325 and 1820 and the Africa Union's Gender is Magenda campaign, GMAC. This is the Women's Situation Rooms aimed at ensuring that women in collaboration with youth play a key role in the conduct of peaceful elections in the country. This initiative was first implemented in Liberia in 2011 and was adopted as best practice during the 18th Head of State African Union Summit in Addis Ababa. It was recommended that it's implemented in countries having elections. It was successfully replicated in elections in the country like Senegal, Sierra Leone, Kenya, Nigeria, and most recently in Cameroon. Knowing that very little place is given to the involvement of women in the management of such conflicts, and on the basis of the strategy experimented during the Liberian and Nigerian election, amongst others, WILF in Cameroon and its partners, after a national consultation on all fronts, offered the opportunity to women through the Women's Situation Room Cameroon to play a crucial role in the promotion of peace in general and in the conduct of peaceful election in particular. The Women's Situation Room was implemented in Cameroon by about 30 civil society organizations gathered within the platform Cameroon Women for Peaceful Election and Peace Education. And beyond the election period, the Women's Situation Room has become a peace education mechanism. About World Beyond War ideas for peace infrastructures in Africa, we started last year in November 2023, Africa Chapters of World Beyond War Annual Conference. This conference highlights the need to invest in African traditional-based approaches in preventing and resolving conflict to foster peace. I'm sharing here some of the recommendations that came out from this conference regarding peace infrastructures, traditional conflict resolution mechanisms. Many African communities have long-standing traditions and practices for resolving conflicts. These can be integrated into modern peace-building efforts. Community dialogues. Facilitating open dialogues within communities helps in addressing underlying issues and building mutual understanding. Dialogues in Africa used to be organized around specific issues. Peace committees. Establishing local peace committees that include representatives from various community groups helps in monitoring and addressing conflict as they arise. These committees can act as early warning systems and intervene before conflict escalates. Peace clubs, community centers, media campaigns, promoting education and awareness about these traditional peace and conflict resolution mechanisms are critical in changing attitudes and behaviors over time. To conclude, I would say infrastructures for peace are crucial in a diverse and dynamic continent like Africa. In order to be effective, some key aspects are worth stressing. Those include the role of local governments and community-based approaches in fostering peace, the importance of economic infrastructures, the role of technology and digital infrastructures, and the role of grassroots organizations. The people of Africa represent the best chances for peace and are the infrastructure for peace above all. The organizations close to these people are their advocates and therefore needs to be well structured. This is the rationale behind the expansion of World Beyond War chapters and the strengthening of affiliation for peace in Africa. Thank you for your kind attention.